Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. In this tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how to use JavaScript import and export. Now, if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel yet, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Okay, now I've created two JavaScript files here, export.js and index.js. And this export.js is the one that we are going to be using to export our variables, and this is what we are going to be using to import it. I just like, you can name your import JavaScript file anything. I just like to name my main JavaScript files as index. Okay, now let me just open the both of them and close this. Okay, now first of all, I would like to just include this index.js in my in my index.js, index.html, sorry, index.js. Okay, now let me save it. It's going to be automatically reloading. The browser is going to be automatically reloading because I'm using live server. Now, exports. Now, let's first of all talk about exports. Now, exports in JavaScript comes with JavaScript ECMAScript 6, and you can export anything. Like you can export any variable you declare with let, const, and function. You can export functions, and let me include class and classes. You can also export classes also. Now, there are two types of exports. There are named exports and there is default export. So, and what about imports? Let me just brief through imports. Now, imports, there are two types of import also, like named export and namespace exports. And to import anything in JavaScript, you use the keyword import, while to export anything in JavaScript, you use the keyword export. Now, first of all, let's try to export a greeting variable. Now, I'm going to create a variable now with let greeting equal to welcome to my YouTube channel. Okay, now how do we export it? Now I'm just going to use this method now to export it. Export. First of all, I'm going to create an opening bracket, export greetings. Now let's save it. Yeah, so with export greeting. Now this is how to export. This one way to export things in JavaScript. Now let's try to import this greeting into this index.js and use it in this index.js. Now I'm going to be replacing the greeting with this your boot container with this welcome to my YouTube channel. Now I'm just going to get the ID of the container here and come to the index.js document.query selector. I'm going to be using query selector, then ID. Now, then the inner text equal to now greeting. I want to use the greeting. Now let me copy the greeting and let me just paste it here. Now greeting. Now let me save it, and I'm just going to show you. Ctrl+Shift+K. I'm going to bring up the console. I can see greeting is not defined, so it is not automatically imported into this file. Now how do we import? Now we use the keyword import. Now before we go on, I'll just try to remind you of something, that this is a named export. This is how to declare a named export. Okay, let me just put it there. Named exports. Named exports. I'm going to be creating more exports downward. Okay, now, and this is how to export a named export. So we are exporting a named export, and we are importing a named export, because this is a named export. So we are going to import it like as a named export. Now, how do we import a named export? We import it the same way we export it, just with the opening and closing curly brace. Now, what do we want to import? Greeting. Greeting. Now, from where are we importing it? From current directory export.js. Don't forget to put the .js at the end, because some browser may throw error. So just include the .js at the end. Okay, now we've imported it, and let's save this one too. Now we've imported it, and we are now, what we are supposed to be getting now is we are supposed to be getting this welcome to my YouTube channel in this your abode. It's supposed to be replaced with the welcome to my YouTube channel, but it is not. Why? If you come down here, you see the error here, uncut syntax error. Import declaration may only appear at the top of a module. Now, what is this thing? What does it mean? It's telling us that this JavaScript file that we are importing, the export is not a module. Now, how do we, by default, JavaScript files are not module, and how do we turn a JavaScript file into a module? Just come down to wherever you import, to all the files that you import it to, that you include the JavaScript file. Just include the type equal to module. Yeah, now we've turned this JavaScript file into a module. Now we can now do all our imports inside it. Now let me save it, and we're going to see immediately it says welcome to my YouTube channel. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Yeah, welcome to my YouTube channel. Now you've seen that the export has now worked. Yeah. Okay, now let's go back and let's try to export another thing. Const second greeting. Second greeting equal to hope you are doing well. Now let me save this, and I'm just going to export it also, because it is a named export. Now I'm going to show you what a default export is just in a moment. Now I can now import the second one also, like second greeting. It's going to, VS Code is going to automatically complete it for me. Now second greeting. Now I'm going to replace the first greeting with the second greeting. Second greeting. Now I'm just going to save it. I can see, hope you are doing well. Yeah. Okay, now let's go to the second type of import. But before we do that, let's just come down here and say, and let's learn about the default export. Now, how do we export a default export? Just by saying okay, let me just say this, default exports. Okay, sorry, before we go to export, let me just show you quickly how we can export a function. Now function function, I want to get a parameter, function calculate. So what are we calculating? We're calculating, I'm going to get a number. So I'm just going to say return number times 10. Okay, so I'm going to export the function also, calculate. So oh, I misspelled it. Calculate. Okay, now let's go. Let's come here and say calculate. Now I'm just going to replace this calculate, this second greeting with the calculate. Calculate. Now I'm going to pass in a number. As you can see, it's telling me that I have to pass in a number. So what do I want to pass in? Let me just pass in 30. So I'm expecting 300. As you can see, 300. Now let's change it again to let's say 50. I'm expecting 500. I can see 500. Okay, so that's how to export a function. Now let's go to the namespace import. Now what is namespace import? Now instead of this importing everything one after the other, a namespace import allow you to import everything at the time. Now how do we import everything at the time? Just say import asterisk. The asterisk means all. Import all. Then we are going to say as what? As let's just say as export vars. Then from where? From export.js. Now how do we access, now that we've imported everything, now how do we access all the items that we export? Now I'm going to be calling the second greeting now. So I'm just going to copy it because I'm lazy. So export vars dot. Now this is how we are going to access all the exports, everything that we export from that file. Export vars dot. What do I want to get? Dot second greeting. Now I'm just going to save it. As you can see, hope you are doing well, which is the second greeting. Now that is a namespace. That is a namespace export. Now let's just go to a default export. Now how do we declare a default export? Just by saying const. So I'm going to be creating an ES6 function now. Full. Let me just say, don't let me call it full. Let me just say favorite media. So I'm going to get in a social media. So this is ES6 function. So I'm just going to be returning it. Return media. Return your favorite social media is media. Okay, now this is, and we want to export this as a default export. Now how do we export a default export? Now before we do that, you can only export, let me do this here. You can only have one Okay, let me write it in capital letter. One default export. You can only have one default export from a file. Default export. You can only have only one default export from a file. Now, this is, we want to export this as default. Now, how do we export that as default? Just come here. It's not going to be included in this curly brace. I just say comma. So this, okay, sorry. Okay, sorry. Let's export it differently. So I'm going to say export default. Yeah. So no more conflicts. JavaScript is no more screaming at us now. Okay, now we've export this as a default. Now let's go. Okay, let me just save it before I go on. And just save that. Now, how do we? Now, I'm just going to comment this out. Now, how do we import a default export? Now, we can do that by saying import. So a default export, the same way we didn't include this inside the curly brace here. So it's not going to be inside a curly brace also here. Import favorite media from export.js. Now, how do we access that? Just call it also, say favorite media. Now, what is my favorite media? I'm just going to say Twitter. So I'm just going to save it. Okay, your favorite social media is Twitter. Now, what if I change it to Facebook? Save it. Your favorite social media is Facebook. Okay, so that is default export. Now, you can also do this as like this. You can also do it as alias, that import default as fm. Now let's check if we can do this. Now already VS Code is already giving us a red sign that no, we cannot do this. Can only be used in. So it's telling us that we cannot import this as alias. We cannot use alias to import it, to declare it. Now, what do I call alias? Let me just type it here. Alias. So you can import something, you can declare an export variable as alias. Let's say import greeting as G. Now, how do I access the greeting? You can just say equal to G. If I just type G, so I've accessed this greeting. So the greeting, the G is serving as alias to the greeting. Now let me just save it. As you see, welcome to my YouTube channel. Okay, now what's next? You see, this export stuff here is like is verbose, something like that. This method of exporting things is like is stressful somehow. So instead of this type of exporting things like this, you can actually export it directly, like say export let greeting, and this also. I'm just sorry, I'm just going to copy it because I'm a little bit lazy to do that. So I'm just going to paste it at the end of each export, so you can export everything like that. So now default export is going to be different. So default export is going to be different. I'm just going to say export default favorite media. Now I don't need to write let or const here. I don't need to write let or const here. But if I'm if I'm declaring a function, I can actually say, okay, let me just copy this and export. Okay, before we do that, let me just try to access it like that. Save, and let's come back here and say export let export function. Now we are getting an error here. Now what's the error? Undefined variable favorite media export JS.16. Say undefined. Okay, so we need to export it and declare it like this function. So I'm just going to remove this arrow and the equal to sign, so it's not going to scream at us again. So this is how to export a function, a default function, or a default class. You can also export class as default. Export default class, then let's say full class. Though we are not doing class in this tutorial, we are not exporting class in this tutorial, so you can also export class like so. So you can export anything as default. We are going to be exporting a function as default in this tutorial. So I'm just going to save it, so it's not going to scream at us again. As you can see, it's no more screaming at us. Okay, now this is JavaScript import and export. Now what did we do in this tutorial? We talked about types of exports and how to declare exports, different exports, and how to export in two different ways, by including the export at the beginning of the at what we are exporting, and doing it this way also, and also different ways to import by namespace or by named, and alias. We also talked about alias. Okay, if you like this video, if you like this tutorial, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and it motivates me to do more. See you in the next tutorial.